Hey everyone, it's another week of Find Your Film. We're post Halloween, so not a lot of I don't know if Eric Holmes, aka Earl Haskins, or Bruce Perky, aka Vampyr Key, Vampyr Key, if they have any horror thriller type of movies for this week. Maybe some of those will be a spill. Vampyr Key just showed me his fangs, a little bit scary. Okay, so I don't know, maybe they might have some scary films a little bit post Halloween. We always welcome that because both of those guys, both Bruce Perky and Eric Holmes, they love their horror thriller films, and I've been educated um, from all the teachings from. I'm just thrown away. I don't even know what Haskins means. That's an Eric Holmes moniker or Vampyr. We're gonna learn this episode what those two monikers they have on our Zoom chat, our Zoom call is all about. If you want to see the video version of Find Your Film, you're gonna go to Bruce Perky's YouTube channel, Rusto Meyer, Rustomire. We have one big movie this week and a whole bunch of other big movies. The first movie we're going to do is Let Him Go. It's the latest film from Diane Ladd and Kevin Costner. Eric Holmes, do you remember what movie both those Diane Lane and Kevin Costner starred in? Do you remember the movie they both starred in recently? Right off the top of
Let Him Go or another one?
Yeah, do you remember the movie they were in before Let Him Go? Do you kind of remember?
I
Uh,
remember a bunch that Kevin Costner was in, and I know a bunch that Diane Lane was in. I cannot think of what they were both in, but I'm pretty sure once you tell me, I'm going to kick myself. So
Bruce Perky, throw down the answer. What's the answer, Bruce Perky?
It's the sequel to Bug, Man of Steel.
son of a nut.
The sequel to Bug, Man of Steel. By the way, Bug, it's a reference to Bruce Perky and Eric Holmes. They both love that film from William Friedkin. We covered that, if I recall, last week. Eric Holmes covered it weeks ago. Both of them are fans of Bug. I still haven't seen Bug. Now, before we get into Let Him Go, do we? Oh, you know what? Do we have a little bit of an update? Earl Haskins, Eric Holmes, have you been watching a lot of movies? Are you working on games? What have you been doing the last week?
Oh, just been working on you talking about the game?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Game.
yeah.
Yeah. You've been spending a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah, so the screenplay I wrote, I was trying to think that eventually I'm going to do a crowdfunding thing to raise money to shoot the movie, and I was thinking of what are some cool crowdfunding prizes, or what would you call them?
Yeah. What
Gifts
perks?
or whatever for the
Right.
perks. There you go.
Perks.
And I got this Alien RPG. It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's based off the movie Alien. And I was like, oh, this is really nice. And then I started thinking of my script. And I was like, that really lend itself well to a D&D type game. And so I started making a game, developing a game based on the the script I wrote, and it turned out it went from this really neat idea to this pain in the ass that I've been working on the last couple months, and actually been it's not done yet, but we've gotten to the point where we're starting to test the game out, and we've played it 5 times, and it's really fun. And so I think once we start doing the crowdfunding thing, that'll probably be one of the perks, because I got to figure out how I'm going to publish the book, make the game pieces and whatnot. And more to come on that, but it's pretty fun. I played it 5 times, and everyone seems to dig it. So
And
yeah,
we'll
we'll see what comes with that.
It copies the settings that are in your screenplay. Are there any other extra locations, or is the world of your screenplay specifically tailored to the world of that game?
It started off just the same setting as the screenplay, and then if you've played Dungeons and Dragons or any games like that, you know that things kind of can go off the rails at times. And so now what's taking me a little extra longer is our group that was playing went outside the map.
Yeah.
And so now instead of just having the map of the place where where the whole movie takes place at, now I'm developing a map of the whole city. And so there's different houses or different buildings. And so you can play the game starting off as the setting within the screenplay,
Yeah.
but I'm also going to have like other houses and other characters within the city that you can play as them too. Same
Oh.
game mechanics, but you'll be able to play different stories and whatnot in there. And so it's getting a lot bigger than I originally intended to, but that's okay because that just kind of makes the game have more replay value, I guess.
That is pretty cool. That seems like hours upon hours of work.
Oh, months upon months of work is what
Months
it's turned
months
into,
upon
but
months.
it's kind of work. It's worth it so far.
Wow, that is amazing. Bruce Perky, how have you been the last week? What have you been up to?
Watching movies, working, just dealing with life, ups and downs. I'll leave it at that.
Ups and downs. You're gonna leave it at that. Well,
I'll leave it at that.
You're not gonna leave it at this because let him go before we go to let him go. Do we have some rewinds before we get into the big let him go? Yes.
I have one rewind, and I did watch Eric's suggestion from last week was Turn Blue, The Short Life of Goulardi. I will not attempt to do the voice of Goulardi. I'll leave that to Eric,
Yes,
the
he was
master
very good.
of the master of
Sure, you
Goulardi.
do good at it though. You know, I'll call you king for now. Right now, I was king, but now you're the king. Go ahead.
And Greg is in Parma. But it's a ton of fun. It's not that long. It's on YouTube. If you don't have any experience with kind of horror TV show hosts, that alone is interesting. But his whole amazing anarchic entertainment, fly by the seat of your pants, small town, like we've got the studio and now we're going to run with it and become like icons within our community. I mean, that all that stuff is incredibly fun, and something that if you don't live in that area, you probably have no knowledge of. And it kind of brings up those, it'll make you wonder about your own areas and think about your own things. Now, obviously you're down near Hollywood, Greg, so you got all kinds of stuff that you could probably pull up as far as that. But I can remember like some of the small TV hosts in my area and how those impacted everybody in my area. So if you lived in the Northwest in a certain time period, I could say JP Patches and you'd know who that was. Or I could say Boomerang and you'd know who that was with Marnie Nixon. And if you know who Marnie Nixon is, she sang the vocals in like West Side Story and a whole bunch of stuff. Anyway, it's really a lot of fun. And it is a great context for entertainment in local markets, as well as the father of a very amazing filmmaker. So it has that great tie-in, which is just kind of fun as well. Oh, also, as Eric had mentioned, if you ever watched The Love Boat or tons of things on TV, you'll recognize the voice when he's not doing Goulart.
What's Goulardi's real name? Eric, do you remember? Anderson or something like that?
Yeah, Ernie Anderson.
Yeah, after you talked about that movie, I looked him up on YouTube and I go, that's a voice I grew. Basically, he's the voice. If you're in your 40s, you grew up with throughout that decade, like you said, he's he's the voice. So I had no idea, and ultimately, I definitely want. So it's worth checking out. It's not even if it's not a little bit inside baseball, a certain kind of niche. Does it have universal appeal? You think, or what do you think?
That's what makes it, I think, more fun is that there's a level of inside baseball, but that makes it, unless you were there, it's going to be almost all new to you. But it'll also have that appeal of it'll remind you of your own similar experiences and maybe kind of bring that nostalgia back to you for your own area of the United States, depending on where you grew up. So it's good stuff.
Okay. So again, it's called Turn Blue, the
Short Life of Goulardi.
Turn Blue, the Short Life of Goulardi. It is on YouTube. You can catch it on YouTube. Okay. So now our big film this week, it's out in theaters. I can't believe movies are actually playing in theaters these days, but it's out in theaters November 6th. Let Him Go, starring Kevin Costner and Diane Lane. They're the main stars of this movie. It also stars, I'm trying to think, it's who's the other woman? She kind of reminds me of the girl from Animal. What is that movie? I'm just completely spacing. The Animal Kingdom. She has this really showy role, and wasn't she?
Yeah, Leslie Manville.
Yeah,
think it is.
Leslie Manville. It's not Leslie Manville was not in Animal Kingdom, but it's Jackie Weaver in Animal Kingdom. What I meant to
Yes.
say in a roundabout way, it's a very showy Animal Kingdom type of role. Now, I saw Let Him Go. Bruce, you saw Let Him Go. Eric, you were trying to see Let Him Go. You had a little bit of technical difficulties with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did not see Let Him Go, so I will allow you to.
Tiebreaker.
tiebreaker. Yeah, there goes a tiebreaker, Eric Holmes. But I
Is this another painted bird situation?
yeah, yes, I think so. You know what? I think, in all fairness, with the situations with screener links, I always have technical issues with my own screener links. Sometimes they expire. A lot of times I can't even get them to work on my freaking iPad. Thankfully, Bruce, you were able to get it to work on your whatever device you saw. I'm going to do a quick synopsis. Basically, Let Him Go centers on a retired sheriff played by Kevin Costner and his wife played by Diane Lane. They're living in this just ranch style, beautiful area, and it's quiet. They have their son who's tending the ranch or the farm with them, and their son has a wife and they have a grandson. The son within several minutes he dies from a unexpected horse riding accident, and we cut to several years later, and their daughter-in-law ends up marrying someone else. His last name happens to he's Wee Boy. He's something Wee Boy. That's his last name, Wee Boy. And this Wee Boy dude, he takes their daughter-in-law and the grandson away from their beautiful halcyon existence into somewhere in the Dakotas in a very hidden, remote area that and when you say wee boys, they're not exactly like Ozzy and Harriet. They're not the Cunninghams. When you mention the name wee boy in the Dakotas, a the feeling of terror and nightmarish violence will pop into any denizen within that environment. So that's the ultimate story of Let Him Go. It's how these two people, they really miss their grandson, and they believe their grandson, who obviously is the last tie to their dead son, they want their grandson back, and they will do anything in their power to take their grandson away from the wee boys. So Bruce Perky, it sounds like a very cool pulp noir drama thriller. It's getting amazingly great reviews, a couple of bad reviews here and there, but mainly really solid, excellent reviews. What I wanted to hear what you ultimately thought of Let Him Go.
Oh, I was not on board for this movie pretty much throughout. I wish it had been pulpy. It needed to be pulpy, but it thought it was a much more than a pulpy. And I think that's where a lot of times I think I fall down in these movies. It's a lot of times it's not the subject matter; it's the tone doesn't catch me right. I think we've had this before where I don't like the tone of it. To me, this is like it's trying to tread the line between pulp and a Lifetime movie, but also trying to pretend like it's more elevated. I mean, you talked about the beginning, right? So within 15 minutes, we have this, well, we have the setup with the grandparents and everyone's this beautiful, loving family. And it's kind of the trope that you see in like, I don't know, Walking Dead, right? Where there's this beautiful idyllic moment and that just means one of those characters is going to die, and it's kind of one of those kind of things. There's a few of those in this movie where you're like, okay, I know why we're doing this. So it's a perfect grandma, grandpa, grandson, kid, he dies. And then flash forward, like you said, and then you didn't mention though the fact that grandma just happens to pull up and see wife and grandkid getting beaten on the street, like just on the street, just physically abused. And it's like, oh no, these guys are bad. And then we're off to go get them. Now, if it had stayed in that super pulpy, like energetic, I guess, mode, I could have kind of gone with it as it's sort of a really, I don't know, just kind of campy movie. But then it like slows down and we're supposed to be in character mode. And we're for an hour almost just driving along with Costner and Lane, driving along with Costner and Lane. And then eventually we get there and some good-ish stuff happens. It's all, oh, and there's a magic Indian in this too. I forgot to mention that. magic Native American guy that drops in.
Magic,
That was nice.
magic, and he's a loner. There's
That
this
was a nice
guy.
trope.
He's a trope. He's an Indian. He's from a way, has a wayward childhood a little bit. It's not his doing. He's a lovable guy. It's him and his horse. He didn't know where he found his horse. He lives somewhere in the.
And we mentioned the horribly manipulative flashback about a horse and whispering that gets done later on. Oh my God, that was so cheesy. I mean, let's see. Okay, I will say the good. Okay. Kevin Costner is actually good in this. And I'm not a huge Costner guy, but he's solid and he's really understated, I think. And he plays it right, like all the way through. And I also want to mention Bill Weeboy. So like the main Weeboy's son is Jeffrey Donovan, I believe.
Yes.
Who was in Villains. He was awesome in Villains. And he's really good in this. He, I think, strikes the perfect balance of menace, that kind of friendly menace that you get with people. Like you just know he's acting friendly, but he is not. Now, Blanche, like you said, she's chewing the scenery, and in another movie that would work great, but here it's kind of like she's in a different movie totally altogether. Anyway, no, this is not for me.
Absolutely. You're like not even 3 stars. I think this sounds like a 2-star review.
2 stars.
Wow. Let Him Go is going to be probably, I think. Diane Lane, was she good? Did you like Diane Lane in this? She's the heart of the movie.
I did not like her performance at all. I thought, and everyone's praising her performance. I thought her performance was like, if you watch it, she kind of plays this like the smiling, knowing, flinty grandma, like, but she plays it the same all the way through. She plays that kind of smiley, knowing, flinty grandma. And there's a few moments where she strikes into actually acting and kind of taking it seriously or elevating a little bit. But overall, I didn't like her performance either.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Look, here's the thing.
And the score was horrible.
Wow. Okay. First of all, I'm going to disagree with you on a couple pointed facts. I think
facts, are they?
No, facts or opinions. Well, I mean, for me, it's facts. Facts. This is going to be
Eric
almost
loves this.
This is almost going to be like the Painted Bird, but there's going to be a twist. Okay. I thought Diane Lane. I agree with you, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane. We saw their chemistry in Man of Steel. It's like seeing these people work seeing them on screen together in a film is always going to get at least 3 stars for me. Like total recommendation, just because I loved their performances in this movie. Diane Lane, I could see where you're coming from, but I've always been a Diane Lane fan biasly. I think she's fantastic in this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets maybe an Oscar nomination for her work in this movie about a woman who will do anything for her grandson, even take her husband, the retired sheriff, who just wants to let sleeping dogs lie and get on with his life with his wife. And see, I think it's a really cool construct because one person, the husband wants to just stay in the ranch and die, just slowly, gradually die and eke out his existence. And his wife, she wants to go out and get the grandson. And I just think that's an interesting dynamic. Leslie Manville as the matriarch, Blanche Weeboy, she is the best part of this movie. Even though she's really not in this movie, she is fantastic because she's chewing a lot of scenery, but I think
the whole movie should have been that though. That should have been the whole movie.
She's so there's that the dining sequence the dinner sequence when they have the little just talk back and forth. I thought that was fantastic. Okay, there's so many fantastic things about this movie. This movie gets at least 3 stars for me. Okay, and that's where the stars end. It does not even get 3.5 stars. It starts at 3 stars, meaning it's a recommend for me if you love Diane Lane, Kevin Costner, and if you want to see the performance of Leslie Manville, which is out of this world. Fantastic. Again, Jeffrey Donovan, fantastic. So the performances are excellent in this movie. Written and directed by Thomas Bezucha, based on a novel by Larry Watson. This felt to me, and I feel bad saying this felt to me like Cormac McCarthy light. Like if Cormac McCarthy skim milk and you put the skim milk on your Cookie Crisp and you eat the Cookie Crisp. I like Cookie Crisp. I like it's not completely great for me, but it goes down almost smooth. That's why I give it 3 stars. But Thomas Bezucha did not know what kind of movie he's making. It takes I looked at my cell phone. It took 47 minutes to get to the Wee Boys. If you do not have an interesting 47 minutes and the only thing you have your hat to hang on is the charisma of Diane Lane and Kevin Costner and all that period production design detail, that's fine. But bring some life into the proceedings. And it was a slog getting to the Wee Boys. Once we got to the Wee Boys, that's all
We didn't stay long enough. We didn't stay long enough.
And by the way, Eric, there is a scene in Let Him Go that is straight up. There's a couple of scenes that's straight up pulp. One of them is just like straight out of a friggin' Jim Thompson novel that you go, I cannot believe this is happening. It will blow you away. There are moments that will just shock the living, what out of you, but it's just few and far between. And I just felt, I agree with you, Bruce. I wish Thomas Bezucha went the pure, just gothic thriller, pulpy, a little bit cheesy.
Great.
Dark.
Didn't you like the scene when they were eating the cake in the car? Didn't that just light you on fire?
Look. I love Diane and Kevin. I just wish they had more to work with. And I understand having a sparse narrative, but to me, this movie just felt like a little bit of it just didn't. I think about that movie, the Chloe Zhao movie, whatever, The Rider or something, whatever that thing. That's a slow movie, but it works. This movie just in many ways doesn't really hit the homer for me. It's more like, it's not even a single up the middle. It might be just like a fielder's choice kind of. It's a 3-star film for me based only on the performances.
Since Eric didn't see it and he's not able to really contribute his opinion on it, I would suggest, why doesn't Eric tell the listeners out there who may not know, most of them should know, but what does a 3-star movie from Greg mean?
It could be anywhere from a 3.9 stars or a 0 star.
Yeah.
I want to jump on something that Bruce said though. You said that Diane Lane plays a like a grandma type character. I still have Diane Lane completely burned in my head from Streets of Fire, so she's always that Diane Lane to me. So when you said Diane Lane as a grandma, I'm like, she's not a grandma. She's not even anywhere close.
Don't get me wrong. She's a hot grandma. She is.
well, no, I keep like, she's always 19 in my head. Even if I'm looking at her right now, it's like, oh yeah, she looks, but
it was great to see her again. It was great.
Yeah. They could have unleashed him. They could have really unleashed him. Like, we agree, right? On that part, Greg?
Yeah.
This could have been like, it's funny because the beginning is almost the same as the new Rambo movie. It's almost shot for shot. Like, he's sitting there looking at the horses and sitting there and he's kind of like, my life is set. And then something happens to upend it and off you have to go on a dangerous adventure. But at least the new Rambo movie, whether you like it or not, it knew what it was. It went there. You know what,
dude? It just took itself too seriously, man. Night of the Hunter. Someone on our Cinematics Facebook group was talking about Night of the Hunter. That's a great film where it could have one of the great things about Night of the Hunter is it doesn't take itself seriously. It's a serious movie that knows that it's a gothic, dark, guilty as sin thriller. And this is what, in my opinion, Let Him Go will be. And okay, not for nothing, Anderson always likes to say this. Sometimes critics will jump on a movie just because of it has that Oscar sheen. And I have a feeling people will start loving Let Him Go because of a lot of the great groundswell of critical praise it's receiving. And it deserves it in a sense for the performances. But man, this to me, when I think of Let Him Go, I think of a huge wasted opportunity at something that could have been transcendent within that genre. Right.
And when we get to year end, I can definitely think of a bunch of cool, weird, unseen, hardly seen movies this year that have fantastic performances that probably will get ignored. So yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Looking at ending things. What? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no worries. It would have been cool, Eric. It sucks that you had the technical with the thing. You would have been the tiebreaker on this one, but you're not even really a tiebreaker because actually Bruce and I kind of really, I liked it a little bit more than you just because of the goodwill of Costner, Lane, and friggin' look, Leslie Manville. Again, I agree with you, Bruce. Just They should have. You know what? If they just did a movie called The Wee Boys, are we?
Yes,
Right?
like a town terrorized by the Wee Boys.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like Billy Jack style or something, where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Instead of Wake in Fright, it'll be Wee Boys in Fright, and they just go right through the Dakotas, and
yeah,
they get the Indian. That's at the end. They get the Indian. He's the last one surviving, and they get him.
he could be the main character.
Yeah. Right?
Honestly, it could have just been him in that town having to deal with the Wee Boys.
Yeah.
I would
Honestly,
watch that movie tonight if it was.
I would watch Jeffrey Donovan fixing his car outside his home out in the middle of
Yes.
nowhere for 2 hours, right?
Yes.
This movie had so much potential. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so that is it. We're finished with Let Him Go. I apologize, Eric Holmes, November 6th in theaters. Maybe don't trust me or Bruce, especially if you love Diane or Kevin, but I don't know. Maybe trust us too. Eric Holmes, it's your time. Your time to shine. What is your first recommendation this week?
Okay, well, I guess I will start off with a thing I saw. It was the Thursday before Halloween, and it was it's got. I guess this is a Dana Gould project. It's it's Plan 9 from outer space, but apparently I don't have much information on this, but Dana Gould apparently got a bunch of people together basically to do an online kind of Zoom style script reading of Plan 9 from outer space. And let's see, we got we got on here, we got Maria Bamford, Bobcat Goldthwait, Dana Gould, David Keckner, Bob Odenkirk, Paul F. Tompkins, a bunch of people. Anderson's friend Mike Carano did the little miniature effects. Because what they would do is they would, between scenes, when no one's reading lines, they would cut to these little miniature sets that actually look really fucking good. I mean, they look. If I didn't know better, I would think that they just pulled them straight out of Plan 9 from outer space. And it's kind of fun. If you saw, they just did one recently of Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like this, but this was a little, I think this was, the people in it got a little more into it. Some of them wore costumes, some of them had like backgrounds, and it was really fun. And it's still, as far as I can tell, it's still available to rent on sfsketchfest.com.
Okay.
And just look up Plan 9 from outer space. SF, I'm guessing that's San Francisco sketchfest.com. But sfsketchfest.com, look up Plan 9 from outer space, and that's very fun. And then there's another one that's kind of I mentioned to you guys I wasn't going to do this, but this turned out to be something that I wasn't quite expecting, and it's kind of on the similar note of an online thing. And this one, I'm not sure what to say about it because it might not be available by the time this comes out, and I don't know if it'll be available again. But if it is, or maybe you can find it somewhere online, it's definitely worth your time. It's Mr. Bungle did an online show, and it's Mr. Bungle. It's got Trevor Dunn, Trace Bronce, Mike Patton, but they also have Dave Lombardo and Scott Ian. And they're doing their first demo, Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny. They re-recorded it, and then they play a bunch of covers from other hardcore punk bands. And I knew they were going to do this online, but I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be, because I've seen bands play where like it's kind of a Zoom thing, like everyone's in their own place playing.
Yeah.
This is not that at all. This is a straight up variety show. It starts off, it's an hour before the band even starts playing. They start off with like a behind the scenes of the band members getting ready to play the show. And they talk about what the genesis of going back to re-recording, the idea of wanting to re-record Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny, how they got David Lombardo and Scott Ian on it. And then, so they got that little bit of a documentary sort of thing there. And then if you know who Neil Hamburger is, Neil Hamburger's got a good, 10, 15-minute set. And so the whole thing's set in a library in Eureka, California, where they're from. And so Neil Hamburger is doing his comedy set in front of nobody, which I'm sure he's used to at this point. And it kind of, if you know Neil Hamburger, that's kind of very on brand for him. He's got his comedy set, which is, look here. If you know who Neil Hamburger is and you're a fan, you know what to expect. If you don't know what to expect from Neil Hamburger, I can't tell you if you like it or not, but he's definitely a very specific kind of comedy. And if you're into it, then you'll love it. And if not, you'd probably just be like, who the fuck's this asshole? And then move on. But
It's
then
almost like imagine an Andy Kaufman character or something.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know?
cool.
yeah, exactly. God. I'm not even gonna attempt a Neil Hamburger impression. So he gets done. Then they got a little more of a behind the scenes documentary, and then the band plays. They come out, and they're playing on this set in the library in Eureka, and they got like all the lights up. It's set up like a stage, and they're playing, and it looks really good, and the songs. If you like hardcore punk or metal. I mean, the album's out. Go listen to it. You're gonna fucking dig it. They opened up with Mr. Rogers. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? And then they go into hardcore punk after that. That wasn't the hardcore punk part. But so anyway, they play the show, and in between, because they're playing in front of no one, just like Neil Hamburger is. But so they get done playing, and you hear. What is this? Is this all there is? And then they cut, and it's Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's the only one sitting there. He's the only crowd. And then so they cut back to the band playing. They play another couple songs, and then they cut back, and they're like, "Fuck you, fuck you!" And they cut back, and it's Henry Rollins like giving them, like heckling them, giving them shit. So in between songs, they're like, they just keep cutting to all these like cameos of people. And then they also play into the whole they do all the cliches that you would see in at live shows, like, all right, you guys ready for another one? But they're playing by themselves. They're playing by themselves in the same, so they're like, all right, who wants to hear another one? And then they play cricket noises, and they're like, all right, here's another one. And so,
awesome.
They really lean into the fact that they're playing in front of no one, and there's a bunch of surprises that I haven't even mentioned yet, and it might not be available, or who knows? Maybe I really hope they put this out on like DVD or Blu-ray or something, or have available online. I mean, it's they had it available online, but maybe this might be one of those things where they put it out for a limited time and then it's gone forever. But maybe it becomes like one of those things where, like,
or a DVD
heard
or
about
something.
that, heard about that Mr. Bungle the night they came home. Oh yeah, check it out. I got a little VHS copy of it or something. Maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know. Or maybe by the time this comes out, they'll announce that they'll have a release. I have no idea what they're doing with this, but it was fantastic. And they did a okay. At the end of the show, they get done playing, they leave, and then they're gonna do an encore, but there's no crowd there. So then they all walk out. They're like, "Oh, you guys want to hear another one?"
They're
Okay.
waiting for like that. There's nobody, nothing.
And then they do then they end up doing a Van Halen song, and they fucking crush it. It's I can't remember the name of it's like one of those double songs. Tora Tora's the intro part, and then the
Tora Tora. Oh, I was gonna say Eruption, but not. Yeah, if it's Tora Tora,
No.
I don't know.
No, it's Tora Tora into whatever that other song is. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, dude, they do it straight up, and it sounds awesome. That I think you could probably go on Twitter and find a clip of it. But yeah, this was fantastic. So you got the Mr. Bungle the night they came home, which may or may not be available. And then you got a Dana Gould and Friends Plan 9 from Outer Space on sfsketchfest.com, which I believe you can rent. And that's something fun to, get some people together and have some fun with.
I can't wait to start listening to Mr. Bungle on my Spotify. That's going to be maybe I should start with a new album and work my way backwards. That'd be a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
So,
Well, technically it's their first album. They're just re-recording it. So you're kind
Oh.
of doing their first and last album at the same time.
okay.
Technically.
Okay. Cool. Sweet. Bruce, what you got?
Yes. I have a brand new movie on Netflix, but first,
Uh-oh.
I can give you my short Mr. Bungle connection. And that is in my early years of my YouTube channel, I did an interview with the Melvins. But at that
Nice.
tour, they were Melvins Light. And Trevor Dunn was in the band for that tour. So I have an interview if you go way into the deep depths of Russ Meyer, because I used to hang out with Buzz back in like 1983 and 84. So
Did you post that on Cinematics?
maybe a million years
a couple
ago,
years
possibly.
ago. I
Probably.
did see that. Go check that out.
Oh.
we need to hunt that down and find that link and post it on Cinematics or something, because I do. If it's the thing I'm thinking of, I do remember seeing that, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I used to hang out with those guys a million years ago. Okay. So now
That
back
is
to
cool.
movies.
Yeah.
I watched this movie called His House from 2020 on Netflix, directed by Remy Weeks. I believe this is Remy Weeks' first feature. It basically, there's two main stars of this, and that is a character named Bol, played by Sophie Derisu, and Rial, his wife, played by Wunmi Musaku. And here's the basic concept of it. It starts out and you see the couple and their young child loading onto a refugee truck in Sudan. And then you smash cut to the family and an overloaded boat at night, traveling obviously across a body of water to get away from where they're from in Sudan. And then you smash cut to everybody in the water, and they are flowing away from their child, and their child is struggling in the water.
Oh my God, that is a nightmare.
Yeah. And then it cuts to the story in present day, which is in London. They are refugees, and they are getting the notification that they are finally getting a house. They're allowed to stay in there on residential status, refugee. They're not, citizens or anything. But they're going to get a house. It's like a government supplied house. So it's basically this terrible rundown, house in basically the projects somewhere in London. Like when they get shown the house, the door is falling off the hinges. They go, oh yeah, you can go around the corner and get some screws and fix that. So right off the bat, you have emotional stakes with this couple. And I would just say right off the bat, both performances are amazing. Now, I haven't seen either of these actors, but I believe William Lindis, who also watched this, said that I think it's Wunmi Musaku, who's the wife, Rial. I believe she's in the brand new Lovecraft Country, which I have not seen. But if she's even near as effective as she is in this movie, you should watch out for her. She's really good. The only other character you might recognize is Matt Smith, who was one of the doctors in Doctor Who recently. He plays kind of like their kind of like the equivalent of their parole officer, in a sense that he checks in on them, make sure they're not doing something that will basically cause them to not be allowed to be in the country anymore and get kicked out. So that's kind of the basic setup. They have a really grounded, interesting, realistic setup, and then they start to become haunted. In other words, they're haunted by visions, especially the father is haunted by visions of their dead daughter, that they lost. And it becomes a really, really interesting emotional story of redemption, revenge, maybe guilt, being an outsider in a new land. There's all kinds of really interesting stuff going on. And this director is a really, really cool thing here. As the couple and the situation kind of starts to break down, there are really interesting scenes that you wouldn't think would be suspenseful, but they are. There's a moment where the husband's away for the day, and they don't have jobs. They're given like an allowance, and that's it. They're not allowed to earn extra money. They basically have to prove that they can be there. So he's drawn this little map for her of how to get to like a nearby store. She's never left the house at this point. And at one point she leaves the house and she starts walking around the neighborhood, and you just get this oppressive, dreadful feeling of what it is to be like a stranger in a strange land. Like every corner she takes, it's like she's in a maze almost. She doesn't know where she's at. She's lost. She runs by kids. It's a rundown neighborhood, so there's rough kids, and you feel like she's in threat just there. And that's not even the haunting story. I would just say that if you like an effective ghost story, but also an effective drama about people in a really interesting and unfortunately kind of tragically real situation, it's very good at that. And I would say the twist in this is amazing. And
Get
the
out of
twist in
here.
this is
Oh, wow.
it's not the kind of twist that's cheap. It's a kind of twist that actually upends the emotional stakes that you've had, and it explains some things that have happened throughout. So when the twist happens, it's actually kind of emotionally devastating. I would say it's almost to the level of like a Sixth Sense kind of twist, but not as gimmicky. It's just something about the situation that you didn't have the full picture of, and you're given the full picture of it.
Is it like, I know it's not a twist, but is it like almost Walkabout and Don't Look Now type of memorable plot? Whoa, I can't believe this just happened.
It's not quite as stylish as those two movies, because those two movies are really, they have a lot of style. They're very creative in the editing and everything. I think it's a little more straightforward in those aspects, but it's a really effective, small, dramatic, emotional movie, and I think it's really quite excellent. It's really good.
Do you want that director to do more type of films like this when you say small, or do you see this as a jumping off point to a broader canvas financially, like as far as like a bigger scope, or you don't want him to do that?
It could be either or. I mean, I think that what you see here is a really deft feel for acting and using acting in an emotional sense in a movie that could have been really cheap and gimmicky, and it's not. So it's almost, I almost didn't want to call it a ghost story, because it almost isn't, but there is that aspect to it, and it does have some moments that are creepy and scary, but they're fully at the service of a dramatic, like, human story. So
Very good. His house currently, I definitely, Eric Holmes, is your appetite whetted for his house?
My appetite is sopping.
Something. Whose house? His house. Run's house. His house.
I
Okay.
almost made that joke.
Okay. Sorry. Well, I'm the idiot who always, I'm the one who's gonna do the stupid funny stuff. You're the one, Eric Holmes, who actually has a sense of humor. So a real one. You listen to Mr. Bungle. I'm the one who listens to like the worst kind of music. So anyway,
you listen to Hardline, and Hardline
that's
is
it.
great.
Hardline is amazing. I need to listen to Hardline more, and we need to bring Hardline back. We need to bring that Hardline thread back into the world of Find Your Film. And maybe, Mr. Bungle, a lot of interesting threads. Maybe that's something I definitely want to do, some kind of rewind on the Bungle stuff. So I have a recommendation, and this is a little bit, by the way, his house, I checked Rotten Tomatoes, listeners. I rarely see this. It's been out for maybe a week, Bruce.
Yeah, it's new release.
Okay, new release. Do you know what the rating is? 100%. 100% from critics. And it's low rating by the audience members. And what I mean by low rating, 80%. That's still awesome. So I'm just saying, I have a feeling the 20% who doesn't like it, maybe it's just not their type of film, but the 80%, I'm assuming, really love it.
Well, this is the kind of movie that if you go in like, I want a creepy, jumpy ghost story, they're going to be disappointed, because it's like such a human, dramatic story. They're going to be like, "Boy, I wanted a ghost story," So I could see that crowd not digging it.
Oh wait, whoa, Bruce, what you just said. You just laid a pitfall for me and you, and not for Eric. But maybe you and I went into let him go expecting a pulpy noir thing, but we were not mature enough to handle the story. Is that a good theory?
No, that's a terrible theory.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to give let him go because I love Focus Features. Thank you for the screening links. You guys are amazing. I loved Come Play. I did love Come Play at least. Okay, but I'm gonna cut out that comment, Bruce Perky. I'm on editor. I'm kidding. Okay, so Kindred. I have a movie, Kindred. It comes out in theaters, actually in cable VOD, select theaters, digital platforms. Kindred. Now, centers on this pregnant woman, okay, pregnant black woman. Her husband, not her husband, her boyfriend recently dies. The thing is, her boyfriend, his mother is played by Fiona Shaw. I'm sure you guys know who Fiona Shaw is. She's fantastic. Her mother-in-law is a very hands-on type of woman. She's very hands-on with the family. So what happens is after her boyfriend dies, this pregnant woman ends up staying in the Scottish estate mansion of her mother-in-law and her stepbrother. Her stepbrother is played by Jack Lowden, Lowden. And Kindred is a very simple plot. It's about how this woman feels like she's being gaslit throughout the entire experience living in this estate, and they both of them have a really obsessive attachment to their the soon to be born baby. So it's a movie about the bonds, the ties that bind, about family, but also the suffocating love that people must sometimes endure in these type of situations. And the lead actress, Tamara Lawrence, she's excellent as the pregnant woman who believes who might be slowly going a little bit, not insane, just mentally imbalanced because of being gaslit supposedly by the mother-in-law and and her brother-in-law. So everyone's good in this. Fiona Shaw's good in this. Jack Lowden's good in this. The director, Joe Marcantonio, he also co-wrote this one. It's his featured directing debut. It is 101 minutes. At the end of the interview, I asked him what's one of his favorite movies, and he mentioned Brian De Palma's Blowout. So
Yes.
I'm sorry I'd say that, but after he said that, I'm not saying I'm not gonna say I love Kindred even more. I just understood where he was going, and this is how I'm gonna qualify it. It's 101 minutes. It's a slow burn type of movie. It's not quick cutting. It's not jump scares. It's a gradually paced film, just like Let Him Go for 47 minutes was gradually paced, slow paced. Right. But in this case, in Kindred's case, it works. There are some supernatural elements. You may think, what's this raven or what are these crows doing around the mansion, et cetera, et cetera. And it's called a mystery and thriller. The thing with Kindred is at the end of the movie, the climax, it will really split a lot of viewers. Okay. You're either going to love it or you're going to really be disappointed. I chose loving the uncompromising nature of the film. It knows what it wants to be, and it doesn't pander to our expectations. Sometimes I wish movies would pander to our expectations, like Let Him Go. This time, this movie doesn't pander to it, and it actually works. So Kindred, highly recommended from me. 4-star film, not a 3-star film, 4-star film for me. It'd be interesting to see what you guys would think of Kindred once. I'm thinking maybe you guys might be split on Kindred as well, but who knows? Maybe you might give the director a little bit of a little upscale because he loves Blowout so much. So anyways, that is my recommendation for this week. Kindred. Eric Holmes, what's your next pick?
All right, my next pick was one recommended by a friend of the show, Angie Clark. And I hope I got the right movie because I just checked, and she said this was directed by Joseph Lewis. But the one I saw, it's 1953's The Bigamist, and this one's actually directed by Ida Lupino. So either I got the wrong movie or Joseph Lewis maybe does something else.
No, this is what happened, Eric Holmes. Because you were so busy creating your own RPG world where you're going to make millions of dollars and you're going to leave me and Bruce Perky in the friggin' dirt once your D&D RPG movie takes off. And by the way, me and Bruce, we're not going to patronize your crowdfunding because you're going to be a rich man with all those interesting ideas. This is what happened. Angie Clark probably recommended Bigamist to you. Ida Lupino,
Yeah.
great director. Thank you. That's a great job. Earlier in the week, I'm on this Joseph H. Lewis radar. We all know we spotlighted Joseph H. Lewis on a previous episode of Find Your Film. Great director for The Big Combo. There's a group member, Joseph Bridges, talked about Joseph H. Lewis a couple of days ago, and he recommended the movie Terror in a Tiny Town, Terror in a Texas Town, one of those. That's why you got those confused. So because but this one is The Bigamist. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
So The Bigamist, directed by Ida Lupino. Either
I'd
way,
say Ida Lupino.
I
Do
will
you know,
figure out how
Bruce?
to pronounce it correctly, because I think we may have to do an Ida Lupino spotlight here in the near future. This movie is great. It's basically about here's the thing about Bigamist. The first time I remember hearing that word is in Shaun of the Dead. They're in the room and they're like, he's a bigamist. Like it seems like this. I'm like, oh, I don't know what the hell a bigamist is, but it must be terrible, because they're like being real secretive about it. And apparently it's just someone that cheats on someone or lives a double life. Do you guys
I mean,
are you guys
I always knew because that's goals, but I'm kidding.
all right?
But yeah, I'm just kidding.
That
I always
I,
knew. I always knew.
I mean that the way that I've heard people mention bigamist, it seems almost like a something more nefarious, like a rapist or something. I thought it was something bad like
Understandable.
that.
Yeah.
Clearly not. But apparently it's up. So anyway, this guy, he's married to his wife. He's a salesman. And he goes out and he loves his wife, but him and his wife they don't see each other very often. And when they do, it's kind of like, okay, time to go to sleep, or time to, do they have other things they want to do beyond actually spending time with each other. And so when he goes out on one of his sales trips, he meets this other woman and kind of hits it off with her, and they go out, and she's kind of sort of interested with him, sort of not, kind of. But then he, goes out on other sales trips and ends up seeing her a couple of times, and then eventually him and this other woman, their relationship kind of gets a little more serious than it should be. It becomes more than just a fling, to the point where, well, I should probably stop there, but he gets himself in a little bit of trouble with both of them. And so basically lives a double life, and neither one of them knows about each other. And this is all kind of held together because he's telling the story to this guy, his wife, his first wife. I guess that's a spoiler. His first wife can't have a child, so they want to adopt a baby. And so this older guy's like, okay, well, we're not just gonna give you a kid without doing some background. And so he's doing the background check, and that he eventually finds out about him and this other woman. He's a bigamist. I can't, And so it's him explaining. It's the bigamist explaining to the guy doing his background check on how he came to that way. So the whole movie's a flashback, and yeah, it's really good. If
It sounds very
that
soapy. It sounds soapy and like.
it
Does
is
it transcend? Does it transcend that whole?
yes, like a lot. This is like a Lifetime movie, and that sounds bad. That sounds bad.
Yes.
But it's one of those where it's all about relationship, and it's all about like, oh, is he gonna get found out? Because like he, oh, I want to tell her, and right before he, you want him to be able to tell her, but then on his own terms, like without getting caught. And it's I'm not selling this very well at all, but this fuck.
It sounds like it really sets up the characters really clearly and the stakes really clearly, from what I'm understanding.
It does. Yeah, it does. And he just keeps getting himself into bigger and bigger, deeper shit, like throughout the whole thing. And oh god, the ending of this is really, really good and kind
Is
of
there a point where
sad.
they're at the same restaurant at the same time and he has to keep going back and forth? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it almost it comes this close to doing that. There's actually a part where that happens, but he gets pulled aside and she's like, "You didn't think I know?" Blah blah blah. Like that part happens, but it's subverted sort of.
Mm.
It's weird because this came out in 1953 before they would have needed to subvert that sort of thing. Yeah, this is kind of like it's similar to The Apartment. You know, the Apartment's a hard movie to really sell how great it is. You just watch it and you're like, oh, this movie's awesome. But you try to explain it to someone, it's like, that sounds stupid. Well, yeah, it does, but the movie's awesome. The Bigamist is kind of the same thing. It's like I'm just falling over myself trying to explain this, and without giving away stuff. That this is just going to be one you're just going to have to pull the trigger on, and don't take my word for it. Take Angie Clark's word for it, because she's the one that recommended it to me. But this one is a really, really good movie and something you should check out. And I think it's so good that I think that when it comes time for my next director spotlight, I'm going to do director Ida Lupino, because this movie made me curious to see what else she has. I think a lot of this too is the female characters in this. They have it definitely has its own kind of point of view to it.
Well,
A male directing these characters would take the female characters in a certain point of view, because a man, men know their own point of view if they were in this position. Women know their point of view being in the same position but on the other side. And I think Ida Lupino does a good job kind of directing the female actresses to be their own characters and have a very unique point of view to these situations that otherwise may not have been in this movie.
also helps that you're saying Ida Lupino as directs. She's, like you said, she's also acts in the movie. Co-starring in the film is Joan Fontaine, aka the actress from Rebecca, she's a fantastic actress. So you're not going to go wrong with Ida Lupino and Joan Fontaine as your leads. The Bigamist is played by Edmund O'Brien, a great character actor, lead man as well in Hollywood. Yeah. In Hollywood. So yeah, you have some really good acting involved in this. And if Ida Lupino will be your next pick down the road, that'll be very interesting, because I was telling him, I don't know if you've seen Bruce Perky, but down the road, I'm going to recommend both of you guys see On Dangerous Ground, which was directed by Nicholas Ray. It stars Ida Lupino, Robert Ryan, and we can get down to, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it's a cop noir set in the snow, directed by Nicholas Ray. The guy, Nicholas Ray, is the director of Rebel Without a Cause. And for years, I thought Nicholas Ray was this mastermind and this great filmmaker, and he is. I think, what else has Ray done? But anyways, there was a couple other things he did that I really love. Oh, he did the one with Humphrey Bogart. I'll get to it in a second. But I just recently learned, maybe a year ago, that Nicholas Ray had to actually stop shooting On Dangerous Ground, which is, by the way, considered a classic, because he had a nervous breakdown. Okay, he had a nervous breakdown during the shooting, and Ida Lupino, who was the lead actress in the film, took over the directing role, and she ended up having she ended up being uncredited. So
of course,
there are people like me, idiots like me, who are cinephiles, who say Nicholas Ray is a man, and he is. But the fact is, why did it probably took me so long to realize that Ida Lupino was a 50% share in making On Dangerous Ground, and no, even more than 50%, because she was a lead actress. So if people like me forget, what about the lay person who's just watching On Dangerous Ground? So Ida Lupino, Eric Holmes, is going to be a great choice when you get around.
Yeah. And speaking of dumbass, I just realized this. One of these days I'll actually do homework before we do the show. Ida Lupino plays the other woman in The Bigamist.
Right. Yes.
I didn't even catch on into that until you said, it was like Ida Lupino actor. And I knew she was an actress, but you said she acted in this. I was like, she didn't act in the big. Oh yeah, she did. She was one of the main characters, and she's very great in it. And the fact that she directed this and she plays that character completely makes sense why her character has have so much gray area and so much to chew on, as does Joe Fontaine as the first wife.
Cool. See, now are you even more impressed of your pick in about several weeks with Ida
Yeah,
Lupino?
yeah,
You're
by
blown
a
away.
lot.
By a lot,
Yeah.
by a freaking lot, buddy. Okay, yeah, that's gonna be awesome. You're gonna have a lot of great research on Ida Lupino. And by the way,
Yeah.
I bet you Bruce Perky knows this. He's gonna trump me too, because I'm sure Bruce Perky. Well, you're a Twilight Zone enthusiast. I'm assuming. Are you? Are you not?
Yes, I am. No, I am. I'm wait, we need to be tested for my lack of knowledge.
Ida Lupino was in one of my favorite Twilight Zone Twilight Zone episodes.
Which one?
I think it's the woman who's it's kind of like a Norma Desmond, if I recall the Norma Desmond type, where she plays a woman who wants to actually remember she wants to stay in
My close up.
yeah. Yeah. It's sort of a Sunset Boulevard type of episode, and Ida Lupino is the star in that movie. By the way, before we get to you, Bruce, the Nicholas Ray film, we were talking about On Dangerous Ground. The Nicholas Ray film that I really love is called In a Lonely Place, starring Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Graham. That's down the line. Hopefully, we'll end up covering that movie. It's a classic film from 1950 about a screenwriter who becomes a murder suspect. So it's a very inside baseball Hollywood thing, starring Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Graham. So great job on The Bigamist. I can't wait to watch. That's a great choice.
Yeah, I just looked it up. She also directed an episode of The Twilight Zone. Ambi Witt, dude. This is going to be a good director spotlight once we get to it.
We should just kick me out, because Bruce, can you for my because I'm the next one. I'm going to have probably not as good of a choice as Ida Lupino. Bruce, can you tease our listeners? What are they going to hear next as far as director spotlights? What's next for us?
Oh, other than the Joe Dante one that we're about to do?
That one. Yeah, what do we have in store? The Joe Dante one.
Yeah, we're going to be doing Joe Dante. Yes, absolutely. We're going to be talking about the wonderful and amazing Matinee, and the even more wonderful and even more amazing Gremlins.
Very cool. Yes, and
my next movie, when we get to it, there is a Joe Dante connection.
Okay, let's get to it right now. Joe Dante connection.
All right. So I was listening to one of the more recent podcast episodes of Joe Dante's podcast, which is The Movies That Made Me, and he does that with Josh Olson.
That's a very good podcast.
Yeah, he had Edgar Wright on there. And each episode they have like a theme or whatever. And their theme was needle drops. So Edgar Wright was bringing all his favorite needle drops, which are basically like a moment in the movie where the music just drops in and it has an impact on it. And of course, Tarantino and all this kind of stuff. And he mentioned a movie I had never heard of. And he mentioned that he loved the needle drop and it was one of his favorites of all time. And it was a use of Modern Love by David Bowie in a movie called Mauvais Sang, a French movie. I'm kind of have a blind spot in a lot of French movies. And I was like, I know nothing about Mauvais Sang. I looked it up. I saw it was directed by Leo Carra, who did Holy Motors. If you've heard of Holy Motors.
Okay, yeah.
He also did an episode in Tokyo, which I recently reviewed. And I was like, okay, I got to check this out. But it's from 1987. I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, who's in it? Well, a very young Juliette Binoche. Okay, I'm a little more interested. Julie Delpy when she's like 17. Okay.
Oh God, wow.
Very interested.
That's amazing to see them as kids,
Yeah. And then the main character is Alex, played by Denis Levant, and he is like his acting muse. This guy is in Holy Motors and is freaking the whole movie. He's amazing. He's like an acrobat, a magician, a contortionist, actor. He's everything. He's weird. He looks odd. He's interesting. Here he's super young. So basic concept of this movie. Very French, very pretentious, and I love it. So you got to go in with that in mind. So this may not be for you, but that's okay. So it goes in and it starts out, you see a guy standing on a like a subway train platform, and he falls forward and he's died. He's killed himself. He is the basically like the inside safecracker technician. Like he's the hands guy for a group of underworld French underworld guys that have been doing this for years. The main guy is Mark, played by Michel Piccoli,
Piccoli,
who played in Belle de Jour and among a million other French movies. And his muscle guy is Hans, played by Hans Meyer, who was in Barry Lyndon. Just to give you some context, these are the two older guys. So these two older mobsters are very worried because they've lost their inside guy. They're in debt to an American mobster who's a woman, surprisingly. And they decide to go find the son of the dead guy, who is Alex. And they try to draw him in to their world to do, like one big heist to get all the money they need to be out of debt. And he has enough money to start a new life. His dad has just died. That is all almost a MacGuffin because the heist almost doesn't matter. What really matters is this ecstatic French love of life and, weird triangle of love. Like Julia Delpy loves him. He's not able to handle that. He gets infatuated with the very young wife of Mark, played by Juliette Binoche. And she is obsessed with the older man. And there's this weird kind of, triangular thing going on there. But really, honestly, it's all about the mood. It's all about the art direction. It's all about the amazing color direction. This is before Red, White, and Blue, the series, obviously the very famous series that also had Juliette Binoche and Julia Delpy in it.
Good point. The Colors trilogy.
And the colors in here are strikingly red, white, and blue. There are just some amazing scenes that only could be pulled off by Denis Lavant because the physicality that's required is he's almost like a clown or an acrobat, but he is just playing a character. So there'll be these amazing scenes. Like there's this scene early on where he's obsessed with Juliette Binoche's character, right? And she's in this hotel across the street because it's so hot. There's no place for her to stay. So she's in a hotel across the street and he wants to go see her, but she's not really wanting him because she doesn't want to really cheat on her guy, but she's kind of interested in him. And there's this moment where he's at the doorway below her window and he's talking to her on the phone. And this is before cell phones. So he's on a corded phone in the lobby below and he has to lean out, so he's leaning back to look up at her in the window and she's looking down and it's beautiful. And the scene when the song drops is also a beautiful extended tracking shot. There's quite a few really wonderful moments in this. If you like that kind of very not plot heavy, very emotionally charged French, artsy movie, this could be you. And if you know Leo Cara's style, he's a very distinct style. And someone that he only makes a few movies. He doesn't direct that many movies. If you look in the last 30 years, he's directed 6 or 7 features, maybe.
I haven't seen any of his films. I definitely have to start on this guy. Wow.
Yeah. It's quite something. Now, as far as where you can see it, this is available on Hoopla, Canopy, Mubi. I actually just rented it on Amazon. If you want a DVD of it, we talk about DVDs, get ready to spend $60 or $70 or something because it's not really available. So you gotta, when you see something like this is special and it has just come out or been re-released, just grab it. So
okay, and I guess in English it's called Bad Blood. So yeah, sounds really cool. Sounds very interesting, and it was recommended by Dante in that pod. What's the name of the podcast again? With he does with Olsen?
The movies that made us. The movies that made me. Yes, the movies that made me.
Yeah, definitely excited about that. Eric Holmes, I just wanted to add one more thing about The Bigamist. I just really dug this up right now on IMDb. Going back to it, it was written by the screenwriter named Collier Young. Collier Young also produced The Bigamist. Collier Young, from the years 1948 to 1951, he was married to Ida Lupino. He divorced her in 1951. After 1951, on November 12th, 1952, he got married to Joan Fontaine.
Oh.
Yes. And the movie is called The Bigamist.
Oh, that's so
Wow.
perfect.
Oh my God.
That's called our podcast needle drop.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
Boom.
Boom, boom, yeah, boom. Isn't that
Holy
crazy?
shit.
So Angie Clark, well, by the way, and Angie Clark, thank you so much for supporting us on Find Your Film. She is a wonderful listener and more importantly, a wonderful friend. And you know what? I'm going to say selfishly, more than a wonderful friend, a wonderful movie picker. I can't wait to see
Yeah.
The Bigamist. So Eric Holmes.
Dude, I cannot. I want to watch that. I want to. Okay, The Bigamist is awesome, but after you just said that, I want to watch the Ida Lupino. I want to see that story.
Yeah.
Oh
Look,
my God.
Calder Young, screenwriter, producer from 1948 to 1961. He was married to Ida Lupino and then Joan Fontaine. 13, obviously sadness because those marriages didn't work out. But can
Yeah.
you imagine 13? And he was married two other
Wow.
times on top of that because before Ida, he married someone else. And then after Joan Fontaine, he ended up marrying this woman
That
named
is-
Marjorie Ann Marsh until his death in 1980. Unbelievable.
That is. Oh my God,
That's awesome.
that's insane. That is just insane.
Calder Young, The Bigamist. Okay.
The Bigamist, written by a bigamist,
Before we
starring
go,
two victims of the bigamist.
Eric, are you done with your picks? Are we wrapped up? Is that it? Do you
I
push
gotta-
one more? Eric,
I got
you one
a
more. Okay.
I got a leftover from last week.
Yeah,
But
let's hear it.
if Bruce is doing what I'm thinking he's doing, I can jump on with that with you if you want
Okay.
to go on that
Let's do
a little
that.
longer.
Did you watch Vampire?
I did.
Oh,
I'll, I'll just hold this one over for another week, and we can both go into
Vampyr.
Vampyr together.
All right.
Okay.
This one is.
Should I introduce it,
definitely
or do you
worth-
want to introduce it?
No, this all you. Go ahead.
Are you cool with that, Mr. Greg?
Yes, Vampyr sounds great.
All right. All right. So Vampyr, 1932. This is 75 minutes. You can see it on HBO Max, Criterion, Flix Fling. It's everywhere because it's been out for nearly 100 years. Directed by Carl Th. Dreyer, Carl Theodor Dreyer. Most well known probably for The Passion of Joan of Arc, considered a classic by many, which was the year before this one, I believe. This is, wow, I don't know where to start with this. This had flown under my radar forever. I'd heard of it vaguely, but I always thought, oh, it's just like another like silent vampire movie that didn't quite cut it. You think of Nosferatu, you think of the original Dracula, those are kind of your classic ones from that era. This movie blew me away. This movie is quite different.
Is it better than The Painted Bird and Let Him Go?
Yes. I'm not going to say too much more about it other than this is more along the lines of almost dream logic and surrealism and things like that. It's beautiful. It's genuinely creepy even to this day. There are some moments in there, and there are, at least to my eye, there are at least two sequences that are among the best sequences I've seen in silent movies for sure. This isn't really officially silent. It has a little bit of sound, but it's pretty much a silent movie. It's got title cards. It hardly has any talking. I'll let Eric kind of drop in, and we can drop a couple other things in. And I have a couple kind of like bonus picks that could be kind of like just little shorts you could add to this to kind of give you that same spice. But what do you say about Vampyr,
Right.
Mr.?
Well, real quick to address the silent movie portion, it was shot for German, French, and English, and then they would say their lines, but then they would record overdubbing their lines, and so according to the preamble in the movie, the English one's gone as far as I know.
Yep.
And then there's only portions of the French version and portions of the German version. So they kind of mix those two together to make the full movie. And I don't believe any of the movie is missing. It feels like a complete movie to me.
Yeah.
But so they have the Criterion version on YouTube, and I rented that. but I was in a bad spot to watch that, so I just watched the regular YouTube version, and it plays like a silent. The one I saw plays like a silent movie because it's got the subtitles, but it's got different music over it.
Right.
And if I would have saw this in the movie theater today, and you told me that this was a new David Lynch movie about vampires, I would not know the difference. This movie holds up like big time, and like the way the camera is always moving around, and you just don't see it. The camera moves around like it does in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Yes,
this movie came out in what, the
32.
Like the camera work in this is beautiful. It's one of those movies, kind of like Assassination of Jesse James. Pause it at any time, wherever you pause it, I want that on my wall. Like every shot looks awesome. It's it has a narrative to it for sure. I mean, they kind of read it. That's it's
right.
part of the vampire book that they find. But it definitely has a David. If you like David Lynch, I cannot imagine a world where David Lynch has not seen this movie, because this is like a David Lynch movie through and through. But this is like 40 years before he even did anything.
It's hard to describe how beautiful some of the cinematography is, and also how amazing some of the shots are. I'm going to give you one sequence, and I bet you, Eric, you agree with me on this one. There's a sequence where the main character, I'm going to talk about the main actor in a second too, because there's an interesting story about him. But the main actor is looking out of a window, like it's kind of almost like a weird, like long, like open window in the side of this wall, and the camera shows him going. It looks at from outside of that window, and it pans past him, and then it pans across to another building. This is a continuous shot, and it pans to another building, and you see live action shadows of people dancing against the wall as it continues to move. And then it goes, and there's multiple shots where this camera will pan and move in different ways and show you things that are, I would say, almost unheard of for something of that era. I was going to comparing to style David Lynch for sure. Comparing to something older, I would say this kind of is right next to Un Chien Andalou by Louis Buñuel and Dolly. Not quite as trippy, but it has some of the same beauty and dream logic. And I would say, if you've never seen Meshes of the Afternoon by Maya Deren, the short Meshes of the Afternoon by Maya Deren, which is probably one of the most, she's the director and the actress, and her and her husband made it in their home. Probably the premier dream logic movie from that era, which definitely influenced David Lynch, especially Mulholland Drive. That will give you the same sort of tone as this movie, but this movie is fantastic.
Yeah, the just to jump on those the shadow dancing puppet, the first one that comes out, it looks like someone's sitting on a bench and kind of moving their feet down, and it's a shadow. So I have to watch it again. It looks like, I don't understand how that happens.
Yes.
Because the feet are up in the ground and then they go down and then they walk away, but there's no shadow of a bench or anything. I don't understand how, and maybe I got to watch it again. Maybe there is a shadow of a bench there.
And there's a ladder sequence too. Remember that ladder sequence?
Yeah. There's like because you understand how shadows work. There's got to be something there, but the way they play with them, it's almost like watching a magic trick. Like that's exactly what it is. It's like, and okay, I know they did something, but I have no clue what they did, because
we're not gonna. I would say we don't describe it. We're not gonna even describe the most amazing reveal in the last third of this movie. There's an amazing reveal that a character finds something else that he's not expecting to find. If you know what I'm talking about.
Not quite.
He uncovers something and finds something when he takes a cover off of something.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. And there's some point of view shots that have to go with that, which are truly amazing and actually frightening. I was actually frightened by something that I saw in there. I was like, wow, this movie can still do something that's creepy that much far down the line.
Okay. I don't know how to describe this. Actually, this describes most of the movie. I don't know how to describe this, but where he kind of sort of becomes a ghost, or maybe
Yeah. That whole sequence.
Dude, that was awesome.
Yes.
Like I see how they do it, because they did the what would they call it, the double exposure.
Whatever. Yeah.
But like the way they choreograph that to make it working with the background as well as it, because it's not just here's a background and here's someone a blurry transparent version of someone walking through. Like he's actually interacting with the stuff within the background.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic. Like,
and you figured they had to do that in camera probably.
Yeah, and it looks good, as good as any CGI you would see today, where they would do that same thing. And yeah, I don't understand how this movie was made in 1932. I really don't.
Freaking amazing. So I would say any cinephile, doesn't matter if you like horror or not, because it doesn't really matter, especially if you like things that kind of tend a little more towards the surreal. To see this movie when it was made is going to blow your mind that you haven't seen it yet. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty amazing. Oh, one last little trivia. Did you read the trivia about Julian West, who's the main actor playing Alan Gray in this?
No, as you notice with the Bigamist bit, I don't read trivia or do
this is fascinating. This movie was fully funded by the main actor, and the only thing he said is, you have to make me the main actor. So it's the only movie he's ever acted in, because he gave him all the money to make this movie. And the funny thing about it is, he's probably not a really good actor. And what it does is, in this movie, he's almost a cipher, right? He kind of almost floats through this movie, like just kind of like amazed by everything. And I'm sure the director was smart enough to say, like, well, this is what I got. How can I use this? But it actually adds to the dreaminess of the whole movie, because this actor is kind of just like floating through it. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I think actually he probably did act again. He was actually bitten by a vampire on set, and just he stayed in his little catacombs until recently, where he came back and called himself Tom Hardy.
Right?
He kind of looks like Tom Hardy a little bit.
This movie, I just can't tell you enough how this blew me away. This is 5 stars, straight up 5-star movie.
Yeah.
Wow. 5-star for you too, Eric Holmes?
Oh yeah, by a lot. And kind of what Bruce was talking about earlier, this was a movie I keep seeing the Criterion, like when I go to Entertainment, I just keep seeing it sitting there, and I never pulled the trigger on it until Bruce saw it for whatever reason. You saw it. And I'm like,
yeah, why did you see it?
I keep almost watching this, but then I never do. And then Bruce was like, I'm watching it. I'm like, fuck it. I'm finally pulling the trigger. I wish I would have pulled the trigger so much sooner, because I love this movie so much.
Wait. So you have the disc, Eric?
What's that?
Do you have the disc? Did you buy the disc then?
No,
you saw it on YouTube. You saw it on YouTube.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. But I'm picking that up next time I go there.
And it's a cool Criterion edition too. It's like a double thick one. It has a giant booklet. It has like the whole script in there. It's got all kinds of stuff. It's weird.
Well, what? Hey, I mean, this is a compliment, Bruce. But why did it take you so long to get to this movie? Because I'm sure this is a movie that you've always wanted to see.
No, like I said, I mean, it's one of those movies I kind of sort of discounted it, because first of all, I didn't know that he was the same director as The Passion of Joan of Arc. If I had known that ahead of time, I would have just jumped in. I didn't know that till after I started watching it. I'm like, who directed this? And then I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, I would have known that. I would have gone right in. But to me, I always discounted it as kind of one of these silent era vampire movies that were just kind of like, okay, but not that great. I mean, I'd seen Nosferatu, right? So that's all you need to know. And boy, was I wrong. So
yeah.
That's amazing. Now, regarding Julian West, did you go on his IMDb? Because I'm on his IMDb. He tried to go back to acting, didn't work out. So I don't know if you guys know this, but he ended up becoming the editor-in-chief of Town and Country magazine in the 1940s. And he became buddies with Noel Coward, not a bad writer, Lauren Bacall, not a bad actress, Cole Porter, pretty good musician.
Wow.
Coco Chanel.
Oh my God.
Cecil Baton. So ultimately, he ended up becoming a fashion editor at this magazine called Vogue throughout the 50s and 60s. And then ultimately became the fashion editor over at Harper's Bazaar. So his style, he was openly gay. His style was really well respected. And I'm looking at IMDb, he'd ultimately mentor up and coming fashion designers, Bill Blass, Oscar de la
God.
Renta, and Calvin Klein. So maybe the movie career didn't completely work out, even though that was a classic film. But he ended up having a great second career in fashion. So
Yeah, the fact
Wow.
that his only credits is one as an actor, one as a producer, both for Vampyr. I'd say he's got the most perfect IMDb I've ever seen.
Wow, that is a great way to close. So many great recommendations. I think this is probably. I'm thinking about of our past episodes. This is just chock filled with really great films. Um, excluding Let Him Go. I'm sorry. I'm so sad. Why am I taking so many shots? They gave us a screening link. You know, I should be the nice guy about it. We love Diane Lane and Kevin Costner, but what do we cover? His House, The Bigamist, and now Vampyr, all straight right down the gullet. Movies I definitely have to rewind. So
The Plan 9 from Outer Space,
then
Dana Gould.
Bungle, it's Bungle stuff.
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff. Listeners, value added stuff. Find your film. And Kindred, the film that I like that. I like my own movie, Kindred. Everything except Let Him Go. We will never. By the way, we will never get any more screening links from movie studios with how many shots I took on this movie. Again, who knows? We could be wrong.
That's my job. You
Well,
know.
well,
that.
you know,
Come on now. I'm the hitman.
Here's the
cop,
thing
bad
about
cop.
that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about that though.
Yeah.
You know, you take the hits, but that means when we love something, it's
That's true.
they're kind of hard on this one, but they really like that one. Oh, that's because you just got a link. Not so, because if you recall,
Yes.
you just got to be honest about it, and hey, that doesn't mean that just because someone makes a bad movie or a not great movie doesn't mean they can't come back again and make one that really knocks it out of the park. So gauntlet's thrown.
Yeah. Before we go, a couple of plug things. Eric Holmes, where can people, if listening to this podcast, if they were interested in just what your movie's about or the RPG stuff, I know all that stuff is in development. They want to get a hold. Is there anything? Can they get a hold of you? Can they whatever?
Well, the script's not in development. That's done. But the RPG is still working on that. But yeah, if you want to read the script or you want to, I know they got Roll20 that you can do like the RPG games. I don't really know how to use that very well because I'm just trying to do it as a tabletop. But yeah, if you're interested and you want to kind of play test it, just email me hamslime@gmail.com and we'll figure something out for sure.
Okay. Hamslime Hamslime. That name, my goodness. That sounds like a Carl Dreyer film. That sounds very nightmarish. By the way, before we go, Vampyr reminded me of the time, I keep on saying this, the time I actually rewatched M, the Fritz Lang film M, several years back with a close buddy of mine. And the one thing that as I'm watching goes to your point, Eric Holmes, regarding a David Lynch film, the thing that really gets me about films from that era, black and white photography, German expressionism, whatever kind of thing, it's so many years ago. And I just got a little bit frustrated watching M because I said, this is one of the most beautifully shot films I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
And how many bleeping years, it's pathetic that 70 or 80 years later, with cinema as it is today, that we're still going back to this era. I'm not saying films haven't improved, but these movies are so transcendent. But why are these movies visually so much more memorable than most great films out today? It's one of those things.
I don't know. I wonder if a lot of it, maybe this is not the point you're making, but like I think of what movies, because look, Nosferatu is a great movie. I love that movie. I love Vampyr so much more, and because it's got like so much more kind of in it and going for it, and like just the way the filmmaking was done. Like
Wow.
I said, it looks like you could have told me it came out today, and I would have believed you.
That's Gauntlet Throne right there. Gauntlet I'm Dreyer over Murnau. That's very wow.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
I wonder if because say 100 years from now, You know, people are going to go back. Oh, remember in the 2000 in the early 20s, you know, I watched this Avengers Endgame, and it really holds up by today's standards. But they don't know anything about like the Uncle Peckerheads of the world, or the Green Rooms of the world, or you know, the stuff that, in my opinion, are fantastic movies, but maybe hundreds of years from now, they're just going to eventually kind of disappear into history. And so people are only going to know about maybe the really popular ones of
Yeah.
our era that we're living in. Maybe that's what Vampyr was. And this is also why I like going back and looking up old movies. And when we found Elise Ski Balachet, that's a perfect example. There's
Right.
so much gold there. There's so many pearls to find that just got erased from history. And so it's you know, fun going back and trying to dig up whatever you can, because you never know what pearls you're going to find. And
Yeah.
yeah, Vampyr's a great example of that.
Yeah, I looked, Bruce, I saw those IMDb photos and I said, oh my God, these are some of the most beautiful images I've ever seen in my life.
It's
So,
amazing.
wow. All right, guys. That is it. That's so many movies. Once you guys see these movies, hit us up. And me, Eric, Bruce, whatever. We'd love to hear what you think about some of the movies that we recommended to you. And Bruce, do you want to say anything before we get out of here?
Check out our Joe Dante episode. It's going to be tons of fun.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Now, that is a way to end things. See you guys.